So I feel like I'm in therapy now.
You are.
Yes, so my name is Daniel Lanzilotta.
Yep.
I'm an environmental artist. I'm a lecturer. I just got my own TV show at BronxNet Television, addressing artists, art, and activism. And I was born and raised in the Bronx. I went to Carnegie Mellon University. I have a degree in culinary arts. And
Not from Carnegie Mellon, in
no,
addition
no.
to Carnegie Mellon.
In
Yeah.
addition to Carnegie Mellon,
Right.
at that time it was associated. The culinary school was associated with the New School of Social Research, and I've been working with plastic debris for 28 years. I started doing plastic art, just hanging out with my son on the beach when he was around 3 years old, and he was playing with his plastic play things on the beach, of course. And I started making things from stuff that was around me. And I had my Swiss Army knife, and I had very strict rules. I can only sit there and play with and make stuff from what I found on the beach. And I started I got fascinated by it because I would have this weird thing and this weird thing, and I would go, oh, look, maybe they'll fit together, and they would fit together. And it would be like, wow, that's really bizarre. These two things should have never known each other. But they met on the beach, and I was the vessel to bring them together. And then they would started to get very interesting, and I was starting to make a lot of masks, and the masks were very revealing, because this kind of work comes from the subconscious mind. And it was like, wow, this is very interesting. And it got to be more and more so. And I changed the rules, and then I would go to the beach by myself, and then I would go from just south of Bordeaux down to St. Sebastian in Spain, and I would stop here and there at different beaches, and I would collect stuff. Then I started noticing a pattern of trash on the beaches, and I was like, well, that's interesting, because I kept finding the same exact trash, and I was like, wow, what is that about? And so I looked into that, and then over the years I started getting more and more involved with it, and then slowly, through some crazy tragedy that I experienced, I got deep into the whole plastics pollution situation, and the work started to evolve, and it got bigger and bigger, and then people would know me in Spain, people would know me in Italy, people would know me in France, Australia,
Because
New
you
York,
were
California,
collecting, or because you were an
because
artist?
of the artwork.
Okay.
And I became more driven by the message about plastic pollution in the ocean and waterways and what have you, in the environment in general, and that the art started to stand alone by itself as art, but the art was made 100% from not found objects, but plastics that I call it harvesting the plastic. And so I think of myself as like a miner or a farmer, and I'm going out to get my bounty. And all the years that I've done this, I might have spent maybe $150 on art supplies, and I'm doing this 28 years. And I think that's a pretty good track record, not to have to buy art supplies. For instance, this piece here, that's made with about 3,000 handmade beads. Every single one of
God.
those beads is handmade from stuff like this. This is a plastic jug from.
What do you mean handmade? You made
I
them?
punch them, and I do the second punch, and then the whole thing is held together by broom bristles. And the main structure of that is a disposed battery-operated toothbrush. It actually moves, and an umbrella. And so that sat around for literally at least 12 years just as a structure. just the umbrella pieces, ribs from an umbrella, and the toothbrush, which I took out of a friend of mine's garbage. I can't go in anyone's house. It's like, I'm like, no, the plastic
You're
bin.
verboten.
Forget the plastic bin. I'm the get them out of here. And so this piece also has a lot of Monopoly game parts. So I collect a lot of trash. My trash walks mostly in Brooklyn and Manhattan, but Brooklyn is the epicenter of stuff to find because people put stuff out on the stoops, and you find wonderful things. And for some odd reason, the Monopoly board game is a hot item in the garbage. I can't explain it. And I get very excited when I find this because I don't want the board game. I just want the parts. And over the years, I've collected quite a few little houses. But the houses are very interesting in terms of the concept of monopoly and capitalism. So I make the connection between that idea and then I incorporate these pieces into sculptures. And they represent, and what happens is it triggers people's idea and memory of the game and capitalism and real estate and where are we? Hello. So it has a specific voice, and so also in doing so, I started collecting
This is amazing.
crack vials. So these are crack cocaine vials that are from the streets of Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, and various other places. And in all the years that I've been collecting crack vials, which is now I think going into my 6th year, I only found 2 in Bridgeport. And I found 1 in Black Rock on the elevator at Metro North. I'm like, why is it here? So, but when you find a crack vial, these little lovely candy-like jewels, you won't find just 1. You'll find a couple here and there. And so the way I came about this is through environmental work and single-stream use of plastics, such as this. And so, between that and this or this jug, the question is, this is a crack vial filled with crack cocaine, highly addictive, cut with fentanyl, deadly, they say in any amount. What's the difference between this and this? Well, this is a lot of plastic and this is a little plastic. This is deadly as it is with the narcotic in it. And this is also deadly because of the single stream use of plastic and its foreverness. But the content, the liquid detergent, is also a nightmare, which is, it cleans your clothes, but people get their skin rashes. And then when the laundry is over, you have microfibers and you have the content of the soap going down the drain, and that goes into the water stream. So that's a really bad product. Crack cocaine is a bad product. So I collected, there's about 4,000 crack vials in here. And my sculpture that I did, Crack Tower, which is speaks to the issue of crack cocaine in Black and brown communities. So I've had many conversations with crack users over the years. I've seen someone overdose about 2 years ago. So I got to know these folks and have conversations, some not so good, some very profound. And it's changed my life. The sculpture will be going into it's City Lights Gallery in Bridgeport, and the opening is November 6th of this year.
What's the name of the gallery?
City Lights. It's on Golden Hill in Bridgeport. So
Yeah.
that'll be the first time, well, the second time, but this is the official opening of the piece to be in the public at that level. And then over many years, I make earrings. I have a whole earring line. This is all kinds of plastic. This one I remember particularly because it's yellow. That's kitty litter, a kitty litter box. So I've made maybe 50,000 handmade beads, which is a lot of beads. It's a lot of punching and sitting and being with people, and people are curious and then they're not so curious. They'll look at you and, I'm sitting in a cafe is where I do most of my work, or somewhere like a public space, and they'll be like, "Can I ask you a question?" And I love that. That's what I'm here for. And we have a conversation. I was sitting by downtown parking lot there in Westport maybe 5 years ago by the river. I like to sit by rivers, waterways if I can, if I have the opportunity. And I was outside. I had my truck. I had the whole thing set up with my tools. And this woman comes over to me and she says, "Can I talk to you?" She's like looking at me. I said, "Of course." She goes, "Can I talk to you about Jehovah Witness, right? And I go, here we go. She was from Italy. That was a crazy thing. And I go, yeah. She's like, what are you doing? We never got to talk about Jehovah Witness because by the time I was done with her, she was like, what are you? She got so mesmerized by what I was doing.
Absolutely.
Jesus went out the window. It was really quite spectacular. And so that's the kind of engagement. I've gone abroad. I've given classes, lectures, a show in Italy not so long ago. And then the same guy who invited me, I met him on a train. I was wearing pieces. And the next thing I know, I was in Italy had a pop-up and a lecture. It was quite fascinating. We were supposed to do something in Australia, and then COVID happened. But we're still talking, and I'm bringing him to Bridgeport to do something at UB or BU, Bridgeport University. So I set him up with some folks there. He's an AI artist and the technologist for Burning Man. And so it's been like this. It's like crazy. And then this past week has been Climate Week in New York City, and it was really mind-boggling. And there's so many events going on, but one of the most important ones was at the Lagone Medical Center about health and plastics and microplastics and nanoplastics, and that was really that was eye-opening. That's really was at the top notch of the folks who are dealing with the science and the medical professionals and
But before we
this
get into
all of that.
before we get into that, because you are a walking contradiction. I mean, you work with plastics and you're creating great art with plastics. One of the pieces that you didn't discuss is the mask that you have on your T-shirt, which is an extraordinary piece. It looks like an ancient African mask, and it's in fact made out of what, bottle tops and
It's made of probably 3,500, 4,000 parts, pieces. But it was made over a very long period of time, and I'll sit and I'll make things, and I'll be making pieces. I don't even know what I'm doing. I'm just like, yeah, okay, I'm making this because I have the materials, or I'm walking around, and this is like all day long. This is not something that I plan on doing. Like I'll be walking and I'll see a plastic in the street or in the garbage or in a dumpster. And I have to have it, and I love the color. It's about the color, and so then I have to harvest that, and I have to carry it with me, and that's sometimes not so much fun because I didn't plan on it. But I always have a little bag in case I do find something, and if I don't have a bag, I have to go look for a bag, and this happens all the time. And then I have to harvest that, and then I have to take it, and that may sit for a while. Sometimes I'll start punching pieces out of it, and I'll make beads for no reason, and then one day I go, oh, let me go see. I think I have the color. And it's already done, or it's half done. And so it's constant. And trash is constant. So I'm a graduate of the New York City Sanitation Department's Trash Academy, and we went to a place last year. I got my certificate, which was a lot of fun. And I actually thought it was going to be very easy, like, oh yeah, I'll just do this. And it wasn't. It was like very demanding. Like you had to do your homework, you had to have papers, and you have to go look, and you have to participate, and you have to go to the things where you have to show up in person. I was like, oh God, I can't. It was hard. And so I did it. But we went to a place called Balcones I think it's still called Balcones. It's a recycling center in Brooklyn. It's the largest one in North America. It's insane. Trash never stops coming in. Garbage truck, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And it's just coming and coming. And you're sitting there like, it's insane. So over the years of doing this, I came to the conclusion that we're traumatized. This litter, garbage, trash is personal trauma to me. Like if I see somebody throw something out, like I took the train this morning at Bridgeport, somebody left all their trash on the seat. I look at it and I go,
oh my
that poor
God.
guy, that person is traumatized. Why do you have to do that? The garbage can is like right there. And that becomes a reflection of your inner story, your inner drama, or whatever it is that is going on in your own personal world. And so when I see somebody littering, it's just not personal, becomes
Societal.
It becomes, yes, it becomes part of society, becomes part of the town, part of the city, part of the state, part of the country, and how we're treating each other. So the tagline for my work is, I bring significance to the seemingly insignificant. So if I have a bottle cap, like this bottle cap here, like what is this bottle cap in the street? You see that bottle cap, what is that bottle cap? I have another. And what is that bottle cap really? When you see it in the environment, you see it as trash, right? And it's insignificant. So if you saw that in the sidewalk and I said, Louise, what do you think of that? You'd go, it's insignificant. But in reality, in my reality, it can be this. You could bring beauty to it. So I'm not the plastic police. I don't want to be the plastic police. I'm not here to tell anybody what to do. But if you want to have a conversation about why we're in the situation we're in, I'll be willing to have that conversation. But otherwise, go about your business, and I go about my business. But if you want to have a conversation, like I said, I'm available to have a conversation.
So have that conversation.
That conversation is, what am I doing and how am I living my life? And you're a therapist, you work on yourself, you deal with your traumas, your issues, your drama, and maybe through that work and that internal work, it's a very big request that there's a certain level of behavior modification that needs to be applied to society and individuals and cities and corporations and what have you, in order to correct what's happening in the environment. We can't fix it with recycling. We can't fix it with a lot of the mandates. People, it turns out, the weakest link in getting trash to be separated is the person trying to get them to separate it. So that's what we learned at the New York City Trash Academy. That's where it really starts. So you have single stream, and everything is in the wrong bin. So then they change everything. No, throw everything in the bin, and then we'll do it at this end. But that really makes it very difficult for municipalities to do the separation. So it becomes like in certain countries where there's a lot of discipline, like Japan, for instance, or Germany, where people are very focused, and it's a matter of a cultural identity where they're already mindful about things. So we don't have that in America. We're very immature. We're out of control. And so to tell somebody, you put your paper here, if it's soiled here, glass here, and plastic here, that's like asking them to give up their firstborn. It's like not happening.
Because we're all so entitled.
Right.
Yeah.
So that becomes an issue. Well, why is that? So we have to go back to the individual. The individual needs to work this out for themselves. And then when I work me out and you work you out, maybe we'll get along. There was a time when people actually got along, and regardless of religion or whatever. So we have to figure this out, and that modification is a very big. I'm asking for a lot, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. But once we can achieve that, then we'll have a system where the environment will start to heal itself. That's a result. The environment as it stands, how toxic the environment is an expression of our consciousness. That's all it is. So when I see a dirty ocean or a dirty beach or a dirty neighborhood, how did it get there? And then I read a report once where a bunch of PhDs realized that the trash in the ocean was caused by people.
Oh, God.
Well, that's a great dissertation. Well, how well the dolphins didn't go.
Right, exactly.
And then there's a slogan out there in the environmental world that by 2050 there'll be more trash in the ocean than fish by weight. It's by weight. Everyone has seen this tagline everywhere, but they don't finish it. It's by weight. And so that's a very important part of the equation. So you say to yourself, that could be remedied. There's a remedy to this, because when you go to a beach cleanup, and I've been to beach cleanups,
that must be like a feeding frenzy
it's like insane.
for you.
Oh, I have stories, but it's like insane. But as soon as you leave, there's another. It's
Wave.
another wave coming
Yeah.
of the same stuff.
Yeah.
Why is that? And so there's a lot of entrepreneurial spirit to try to stop it. You're not going to stop it because human beings are creatures of habit and they keep doing the same behavior over and over and over again. And what do we know about that? It's mental illness. The repetition of behavior over and
And
over.
expecting a different result.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not happening. So in
But I
order for
think
that to
another
change,
problem is that people don't yet see the consequences. You know, you hear about it and it's kind of an intellectual exercise, and yes, you know, we're polluted, and yes, this is a problem. But if they don't feel the consequences personally, then they're not going to adapt their behavior.
those consequences and those is called disease. We now know it's not a hoax that microplastics have passed the blood-brain barrier. It's in the placenta. It's in salt in the Himalaya mountains.
Oh my God,
It's
yeah.
like embedded in the crystallization of salt beds. It's now. I just saw the latest science is that it's inside the human bone inside bones,
Wow.
like marrow. And so when I see something like that, you have to really start understanding that microplastics and nanoplastics you can't see at all. The eye can't see that. And so at least we got the little beads out of the scrubs for facial scrubs and soaps. I mean, okay, we could start somewhere. And then there's, toys, like stuffed animal toys that you'll see at a checkout for kids. I do a thing called I did a nerdoscopy. What is it? Some kind of crazy thing I came up with. I would find a stuffed animal, and then right on the street, I would cut the little stuffed animal open, and inside that stuffed animal, it's not stuffing anymore, like natural stuffing from years ago. It became
beads.
polyesters, but now they fill these things up with these little plastic nurdles, which is the pellets that they're used to make to extrude plastics. So, wow, that's crazy because once those are broken, these are single stream use. Kids get the toy, they play with it, it gets ripped up, it goes in the garbage, and then they go into the environment very easily. So this is a major problem, these things. So there are companies going out collecting these things, but it's a never-ending story. It doesn't stop, and it always has to go back to oneself.
But correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't you also suggest that plastic is not inert, that it's off gassing all the time, and that's why
Yes.
when you go to these toy stores, they just
Oh,
smell
it's
so awful.
the toy store, the dollar store,
Yeah.
like a tire place where you buy
Yeah,
tires for your car.
absolutely, yeah.
If you ever go into these places, especially if it's not vented properly, but the dollar stores, we spent quite a bit of time. A few years back, we would go to different dollar stores and just go up and down the aisles, and we couldn't breathe in these places because all the plastic is get off gassing. Yes, there's let's see, Sarah Jean Royer. She's a French Canadian PhD scientist out of Canada. She's the one who really said, when does this start? And it starts at the point of manufacture. It's not like you get a water bottle or any kind of plastic, and then there's a set date that it starts to, give off toxic fumes or break down or start leaching into drinks and waters and whatever. Packaging is, soft packaging is crazy. But there is some kind of movement towards changing that and the formulations. And there's a lot of startups, a lot of young people are doing startups to change that science. But it's not so much, the technologies are there, but it's very difficult to scale up. So yeah, you can do it in the lab. Yeah, you can do it because I have a little company and we have boutique packaging. But to try to do something for a large scale company, it's very, very difficult to do that. And plastic has its place. It's just that we haven't gotten to the point where we're disciplined enough to do what we should be doing with it.
So the therapist in me is asking you that you are a walking contradiction. This is your life's work. And I think you're a brilliant artist. I've seen a lot of your work and I think it's fabulous. And you are working with plastics
Yes.
on a daily basis. This is your life. So if plastic is so toxic and if it's not an inert substance and if you find that it's just, polluting our environment, polluting our world, how is it that you justify that this is the medium that you work with?
Because I didn't create it. I'm just using it. I didn't formulate this. I'm the opposite of most artists. 99% of artists out there, unfortunately, and I don't want to, I'm not here to also be, policing anybody. Creativity is creativity. And you express yourself as you see fit. However, there's a thing called what I've come to is extraction and non-extraction. And if you're going to make art or express yourself in by some means, that means that those products are probably fossil fuel based. Acrylic paint, for
Yeah.
instance, spray paint, graffiti. You're atomizing liquid plastic out of a can. That's what spray paint is. It's liquid plastic. And as soon as you push the button on a can, it atomizes, it dries, it's nanoplastics. And if you think about how large the community is around graffiti, I love graffiti, but there's a point to where, like, hello, there's something crazy on. Why are you wearing a respirator when you spray? They didn't do that back in the day when I was growing up in the Bronx. They just sprayed. But now, if you go out to, hip hop graffiti festivals or things like where they spray on legal walls, everyone has a respirator on. So that's a massive issue because it's hip hop and graffiti is a worldwide phenomenon. It's not just the Bronx and in inner city places like we have here. So that's an issue. So my work is strictly about non-extraction. I don't buy any art supplies. This piece is held together 100% by broom bristles. There's no glue, there are no screws. If I have to use a screw, in this particular case, I did use screws here. There are 6 screws, I think, here. Then I'll do that because there's no other way to make the connection. But 99.9% of the time, the connections that I have to make between different plastics that don't want to be together is through heat or through mechanical means. So I did that. Then I offset that by giving up my car. So I'm not purchasing petrochemicals. I gave up my car 28 months ago. It's been a little challenging here and there, but that was a good way to deal with okay, so I do this, but I'm not burning it. I'm not causing flames. I'm not causing any dioxins to go into the air. It's very controlled. If I have to melt something, it's almost instantaneous. And in all the pieces I've made, I think I've made 3 mistakes. And that kills me if I make a mistake. So out of this stuff, when I was punching stuff and I had little dots, I was like, okay, what do I do with this? So then I started putting them in little bags, and I made art with the waste. So there's a very little waste from when I'm making the art, and so it's like a closed loop system in a weird way, but not 100%, but close. So it's very nice that I don't have to buy any art supplies.
But you also have a philosophy about multiple use. You've got a story I remember about a baseball.
Yes, I have a baseball. You tell me what that is.
That's a baseball.
Are you absolutely certain?
I'm certain that's a baseball.
Just make sure it's a
I'm
baseball.
certain, yep.
Now,
And it looks like a professional baseball.
you have a you're a psychologist, right? You have a cognitive bias to that item. You believe it's a baseball. And I'm saying, perhaps, Louise, it's a pair of mittens, or a sweater, or a pair of socks. So now we're confronted with this idea. How are we seeing the world? How am I seeing this person? Because the ball also represents another human being. Black, gay, Jew, Arab, it could be anybody. So your
What do you
cognitive...
mean how? I don't understand that
So
connection.
the connection is like you believe it's a baseball, and that's your bias to it because I said it's a pair of mittens. So you've already been biased by someone telling you that it's a baseball simply because it looks like a baseball. And I'm saying to you, I don't believe it's true that it's a baseball.
Or that it's
So
just a baseball.
I'm challenging your perception of reality. So when we'll meet somebody who's different than ourselves, whoever that may be, your bias towards that person has already been established because of the visual impact of a color of someone's skin, or clothing, or a yarmulke, or a beard, or a turban, or a dot. Whatever that cognitive bias has already been established, that's what you've been stopped by. Instead of going beyond Let me find it. Beyond the skin. This is the baseball skin. So when you deconstruct it and you deconstruct the way you see the world, then you go beyond the skin. And that, inside that baseball, is yarn. So now we have potential. Shift. There's a shift of consciousness. So that shift of consciousness is that you stopped by the skin, and then because I deconstruct the baseball and I have the yarn, now I have the ability to say, what could it be? It could be mittens. It could be a sweater. It could be a ski hat. It could be socks. So I have now shifted my perspective from simply deconstructing my own racism, my own homophobia, whatever my phobia, my fear is my fear is holding me back. It's killing me. It's killing a lot of people, right? So I've transcended that by deconstructing this scenario, and I have the
Fantastic way to present that.
I have the
And I bet kids would resonate to that.
right. So I have that. So what could that be? So I did this thing in the South Bronx. I did it in New Haven. I've done it with the Wise Men's Group in Westport. Like, these are very, very intelligent men and they PhDs and what have you, little kids in the South Bronx. And I once they got past this idea, turn to your neighbor and look at that person and go beyond them. You're not the package you come in. You are not the package you come in. So if someone wants to attack you for whatever reason, your sexual orientation, your religious beliefs, all this nonsense, we're all the same. We're all balls of yarn. We're all potential, right? So what is it? It's a bag that's knitted by a friend, or socks, or whatever it is. So I did this with kids in the South Bronx. And I said, does anyone here know what Etsy is? Yeah. And I said, well, where are we? How far are we from Yankee Stadium? Not that far, just a few blocks away. Well, get your glove, because I exaggerated. Stand outside, catch all the balls, deconstruct them, learn to knit, make things, mittens, get a Etsy account, sell your products. And they said, we can make money? Boom! They were like the whole we went from cognitive bias, it's called functional fixedness, that this object is only this. That's called functional fixedness. It's a part of Gestalt principles of psychology and part of Gestalt principles of psychology. There's a division or a section of it that is attached to design. So the brain will finish the concept. You could do a graphic of something and be incomplete, but your brain already has completed it. So that's what this is. So you're going from the ball to a sweater. And once they made that connection, they were blown away. And so, because I got asked to do this class, there were like 12 kids in 2 classes. And it was fascinating because I went in there, this was part of the class, but I went in there with Trader Joe plastic tubes from the fruit and vegetable department that the plastic bags come on, and string and paper clips, all kinds of weird things, stirring sticks from Starbucks. And they thought I was going to come in as an artist and do pictures. I wasn't coming in to do this. I was coming in to teach children to see and to conceptualize and get beyond what we're told.
Fantastic.
We have to get beyond what we're told. And what's interesting about it, in my experience with doing this with kids, you will always find the engineer. It's unbelievable. I did this in New Haven. I think it was Columbus School. They invited me to give a class. So I went to Starbucks. And at that time, you could touch everything in Starbucks. It's pre-COVID. And I got dozens and bazillions of sticks and straws and the little plastic Starbucks credit card thing, to get coffee. And I took the little card and I cut it into a fan, found the center first, cut the thing, and then I manipulated the 2 different size straws. I put the little straw into the big straw. I got the stick. I put it on the fan, At that time, I had a car and I was driving across the connector in Westport from Post Road to 95. And I put the little fan out on the straw. The straw was the handle. The other stick went through the straw that was the T. And it spun so fast, it melted the straw.
Wow.
And I was like, wow. And the whole point of that is that was going to be a turbine with an interface that could charge a phone. You could buy these little interface things. So it's like a little generator. And you would see these as kids growing up. There was a little motor on the back of a bike, like a little thing, and it made the headlight light at that time. Same idea. And you could still get these things, the little interface charger. And that would get hooked up to this fan, this turbine, and you can light something or charge something. Well, these kids were so unbelievable. They were like blown away by this, but there was a little girl. And I made a lot of these things. And in fact, I gave all the extra ones to a friend, and I happened to see them this morning because I was there this morning. She kept these fans. I should have brought one, actually. And she was like, "Do you have any more?" I said, "Yeah." So I gave her a few, and she deconstructed them, and she started playing with her own design concept. And I knew that she was an engineer, natural engineer. Same thing happened with a kid in the South Bronx. He was unbelievable. He was unbelievable. And he was like, and his father, he was the only parent there. And afterwards, I watched him and I was paying attention to what he was doing. I said, "You know, your son is an engineer. Because he's a natural. He's going to, that's where put him in that direction because he's got it." And he was like, "Yeah, I think you're right." And that was really good. And when you're in these types of things, they sometimes have a monitor with the kids. And I remember this guy's name was Jose, and he came over to me because it was between the two groups. He goes, "What you're doing, what you just told them, no one's ever told them."
Yeah, what a great way to get kids involved.
And that was it. No pencil,
Yeah.
no paper.
Yeah.
You could do that some other time. But we need to start looking and thinking, and hello, you know this, critical thinking sort of has gone out the
Absolutely.
window.
Yep.
And if you're not going to get it in school, at least try to nurture that child somehow if you're that parent. It has to come from somewhere. Where I got it is beyond me. But I also grew up in a household in the Bronx of mixed cultures. And my mother's slogan was, "If you're going upstairs, take something. And if you're coming downstairs, take something." And what she was saying, if the dirty clothes are upstairs and they have to go to the basement, do that. And that little slogan has been with me my entire life. So we're not really learning self-reliance on how to do stuff. And so I grew up in a household where everything was self-reliance. We made everything, pasta, tomato sauce. We built everything. My father was a concert violinist. There was music. There was baking and cooking. And, I was always either with my mother or my father would go, "Let's go hunting." We never went hunting. He had a shotgun. We would go up to a farm in upstate New York and we would get apples. That was it. We never shot anything ever. But the fact that we went out into the woods together, so I had a bond with him and I had a bond with my mother. And that stuff showed me the boy of 7. I'll show you the man.
I don't know what is
That's
that?
a very famous quote. I forget where it comes from, but you can look it up. Show me the boy of 7, I'll show you the man.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, now if you take any newspaper and the stuff that's going on in the world and go, there's something happened to that person before 7. There was some disconnect, some not, or no input to make this person, because if you're not paying attention to your children, by 7 something's up, and you can correct that. And so that becomes a big issue in society as an umbrella. So we have to start looking, and it's the African proverb. It takes a village. Hillary Clinton said it, and there's truth to that. Because when I was growing up in the Bronx,
There was community.
there was community, but it was almost silent. And what I mean by that is if I was going to the store to get bread and I
Right.
did something stupid going from, and it was only a few blocks, my mother would go, "Oh, what did you, what was that?" Like, what? Because someone saw me
Absolutely. Yeah.
and someone got in touch with her.
Yeah.
So you were covered somehow.
Yeah.
And so you had to think about your behavior before you did something stupid. And that's just the way it was. When I was growing up in the Bronx, drugs were rampant. And my father would say, he would check my arms coming home. And he would warn me. And I go, I don't have to do any of that because I'm busy doing my thing. I was always doing this as a child, so I had some kind of passion or something that I was interested in using my hands and making something or doing something and creating something. And that's really, really where we should be. We have to create, and I don't mean online with computers and all that stuff, because we have to get our hands in the soil. Antidepressants are in the soil, as you know, and cook and build and make
Absolutely.
and sew, and there's a revitalization of repairing stuff, and there are meetups for repair cafes, and just start making stuff on our own, because the stuff that's being made is very scary. It's
Well, and
junk.
I think it also gives people a sense of purpose. You know, I read all this literature about young men and how they're all suicidal and they're all depressed because they don't have a sense of purpose, and it's because it's this sterilization that's going on. There's a sterilization of the community. There's a sterilization of how it is that things are made available to you. You know, there is no process. There is no.
Well, that's true. And when you said that,
That's great.
you reminded me of this piece. This piece was made at a hard time in my life in Brooklyn. And the orange parts are the tops of Tropicana orange juice. And so
Wow.
now you can't get those pieces anymore because Tropicana Orange just discontinued that design. And I just so happened to find 4 of those in my junk box of plastic stuff. And I think, wow, these are treasures. So I wear that piece. And I had that piece on when I was living in Harlem. I was in a bar in Harlem. This woman saw me standing there with it on. She goes, "Can I wear it?" I go, "Sure." I took it off, put it on, and she walked out. It's gone. And somebody standing there and goes, what? I said, "No, she'll be back. Don't freak out." She was gone. She came back. I didn't like, oh my God. So there was a trust. We became friendly. And that was just, I'm in Harlem. It's a village.
Yeah.
It's a village. So my fear was gone. And so through trash and garbage and doing this work, I have made so many incredible friends and
Connections.
acquaintances and stories, and it never stops giving. And it's just like sometimes I feel like I can't do this anymore. Like this is out of control. Then of course I see a piece of plastic on the street. I'm like, oh my God, I got it talks to me. It
But
speaks
you're
to
such
me.
a great storyteller too. So tell me about your connection to Al Gore, because you're also working. You have a considerable involvement with the environment.
Yes. So Al Gore, former Vice President Al Gore, started an organization called Climate Reality. And it's a worldwide organization. You know, he started the whole movement really about climate change way back when. And I got wind of it, so I signed up and then went to the Javits Center at the time. I think it was 2 years ago. There's 3,000 people come to this. And Al Gore, many speakers. Michael Regan, the former head of the EPA, was there. It was unbelievable. It was 3 days of that. Al Gore has an incredible command of this subject matter. He just spoke last Monday. I had an invitation to that, but I was too burnt out from all the other things. Climate Week in New York City is insane. It's like there's so many different events to go to, but I had to pick and choose them very carefully because I was moving around so much and I was just so tired. And then I'm also a active member of a thing called Human Impacts Institute.
Yeah.
They're also a worldwide organization, and they were having a big thing. And then the Nest campus at the Javits Center which is also a 3-day event. That's the Javits Center. I mean, they don't use the whole Javits Center, but they do use a good portion of it, and that was gigantic. But the thing at the Lagone Center and the plastics and its impact on human health and well-being, that was my primary one I wanted to be at. That was like 8 hours of being just there. And that was just mind-boggling. I mean, it's all scientists and doctors and researchers from around the world. And sometimes you see people that you've seen at other things, and that starts to happen because I'm in it so much for so long now. I start seeing people from different organizations, and that happened at the Human Impact Institute that was down at Pier 57 in New York City on the Hudson River. That's the one I paid attention to the most, and also to the Lagone, and then various other ones.
What was the issue with the Langone that
The
was so
Lagone one, the
fascinating?
Lagone one is the seriousness of how profound nanoplastics and microplastics have infiltrated our bodies, our food, our soil, our air, the air we breathe, and it's really was more scientific than anything else. It's really based on all science, and it's factual. It's not a hoax. It's for real. It's in our blood. It's in our food chain, and as it begins at the lower end with krill and sea life, marine life, and as it moves up the food chain, then we're next at the very top. Then we start eating that, so that becomes a big problem. And they really still don't know the complete impact of how this is, and
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah.
hormonal disruptors and PBA and bottled water and leaching, but it's pretty scientific. They have an idea of that it's not good, and that it doesn't look like it's going to get any better anytime soon. So we have to start thinking in terms of different ways of handling the waste.
But do they have any ideas about mitigating the impact on the body?
Well, I don't know if they have that completely under control yet. No, I don't. I wouldn't say they do.
Are they
because-
addressing it?
Yeah, they're addressing it, but there's when you find it in a human placenta,
Right.
it's time to wake up.
Right.
And
in mother's milk.
in mother's milk and water. We're not going to get away from it. It's in water everywhere. And just recently, last year, during the winter season, there's a very big concern about salt in New York State, in New York City, drinking water that's leaching in from
The roads.
the salt that they use on roads, that they issued a warning about it. This is a very serious problem because once salt is in the water, there's no way to get it out. It's done.
Well, doesn't it get flushed out with the new influx of water from whatever is irrigating?
I would say not. No, I'm not an expert in that field, but I would say that if you have a bad winter and you're using a lot of salt, that salt doesn't mean that it's all going into a reservoir, especially around upstate New York where the reservoirs are. But there's going to be some kind of residual salt that's sitting in the soil. It's not all going in, but when it rains, then it will go into the water. So there's a cycle to it, and there's a way that it's going to go into the water somehow, some way. Storm drains, car tire, rubber from. Rubber crumb, it's called crumb from tires, or if you just pay attention that everybody on the planet is wearing fake shoes. It's not leather, they're all rubber. All rubber's got some kind of chemical in it. And the amount of chemicals is like 1,600 chemicals used in plastic production. And they're not tested. There's only a very small fraction of these chemicals that anyone understands completely. You have to be a chemical engineer, chemist. I mean, it's really like that far gone. So
I'm back to the water. So we're drinking water out of brown fields, essentially.
I would say brown fields, but I would be concerned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you have to pick your poison, basically. How are you going to offset it? What are you going to do? How is your lifestyle? The fashion industry is one of the worst contributors to the problem with plastics, the blends of clothing. Then there's the microfibers of washing. It just goes on and on and on and on and on. By the time you're finished, you can lose your mind in this stuff. But
Right.
It's just choosing, making better choices about what you buy, eat, glass versus plastic, clothes, cotton, wool, those types of things. And then, shoes, that's a tough one because if you're going to go buy a good pair of shoes, you're in it for $300 or more. I mean, if you really want to start at a level that's going to be like, okay, these shoes are $300. That's it. This anything below that, and making stuff yourself. Choosing ideas and things that make a difference in your life. The carpet industry,
Oh, I know.
synthetic carpets.
I know.
It's
And
like,
that's another place that when you go into those stores, you can't bear the smell.
right. So, like, for
Because it's
instance,
all
at
off-gassing.
Climate Reality at the Javits Center, we're speaking to all these things, and you hear this stuff, but you're in an environment that's fake. You're sitting on a fake chair. But you're sitting at a table, rubbing, absorbing. This is the largest organ on our body is our skin. And so you're absorbing chemicals all day long. You have intersectionality. There's all kinds of things happening. It's coming in at you at all different levels: food, touch, clothes, air, soil. COVID, plastic mask. It's like, okay, enough already. So you have to be very cognizant of how you're moving through space all the time. Because if you're in the subway, the subway essentially is a syringe. Train is coming in, there's all this toxicity down there from whatever, all kinds of crazy stuff down there. It's pushing the air, you're standing on a platform, you're breathing it in. Then, you didn't get on the train, but when it leaves the station, it's sucking.
Oh, my God.
So it's like, okay, enough already, stop, I can't. So you stay under the covers, they're polyester.
Right. There's no escape.
You go on a date, the woman has a wig, it's made of,
Right.
it's all fake makeup. It's like it never ends. So you have to find a happy medium somewhere and do the best you can, make good choices, and eat as well as you can afford, whatever your situation is, and just keep everything to a simple way. But we live in a modern world. It's hard to escape the mechanisms and the structures that exist, because we're using cell phones and we're using computers and all kinds of electronics. And then there's the EMF aspect of it, the stuff you don't see,
Right.
The wireless stuff. We have no idea what's happening. And so if you live near a power plant, it's like, forget about it. But it's like, just choose better. Don't eat crazy stuff, and stay away from high tension power lines.
But I think another nourishing part of this conversation is the fact that, again, there are all these young men and young women who have no sense of purpose, and they don't know how to do things because they're living in a very sterile world where everything is made for them, everything is brought to them. There is no sense of community anymore, and I think that there's the potential for a breakdown in the community. And you've got AI that's going to further exacerbate this, not having to do anything and not having to take care of anything. And I think the fact that you've brought this idea where things have multiple uses, and that you can make things and that you can create things and look at how you can do this and have a different perspective of looking at things, is a very nourishing, wonderful thing to provide children when they're going through the formative stages, especially before they're 7 years old, because I had never heard this by seven, whatever it was.
It's a very powerful statement.
And I think that it would be lovely to introduce these kinds of things into the curriculum, because I know that they're reevaluating the curriculums in all of the schools in the United States now. And I think it would be wonderful for someone like you to advocate for them to, incorporate something like this into the curriculum.
I do a lot of activism and advocating for a lot of things. I'm not good at going to marches and the signs, and I've done that.
I'm too old.
I'm a different type of activist. So my art speaks for itself through activism and doing this here right now with you. But taking over a show in the Bronx, and the name of the show was Artist, Art, and Activism and Activation. Because you can't have activism without activation. Okay, it's an equation. So what happens on one side of the equation has to happen on the other side of the equation. Basic algebra. And so, if you're going to be an activist, anyone could be an activist. You could just be a quiet activist by doing your part. And so, I have an opportunity now to be on a network that serves New York City to invite people who are doing something and saying something, but it has to be the work that you're creating has to speak on its own. In other words, you can leave it somewhere and someone will look at it and go, oh, I get it. There's a message there. And I did that recently with somebody who's an artist, and his paintings are called Black Men Reading. And I was looking at these paintings for about a year until I invited him on the show, and I asked him if he was an activist. He's a painter. He goes, I'm not an activist. I said, yeah, you are. Because your paintings are about Black men reading. And I said, your paintings stand alone as activism. It's quiet. But when you look at it, it's got a very profound impact. That's activism. So that's what I'm looking at. That's who I want to know. That's who I want to be around. Those are the people I want to interview and have conversations with, because in some way they're changing the world. And that's how it has to go down for me. So that's the activism that I like, and that's the activism I participate in. And by not being a consumer. So when you are a maker, you're making stuff. That's a form of activism. That's a form of, and I don't use this term, I hardly ever use this term. I don't use the term resistance. When I hear this word, I think I'm going to lose my mind.
Right.
So when I hear resist, no, don't do that. Why would you resist?
Right.
It's physics. It's basic physics.
Yep.
When you have a wire and it gets really hot, that's resistance. And then it goes poof, you have a fire. Resistance causes disease. You want to be this way? Let go of it. If you don't let go, you'll get sick. My platform has been be conductive. Have conductivity with someone you don't like. Because the oppressor, no matter who the oppressor is, wants you to be tired, wants you to resist, and wants you to get sick, because that's the way the whole thing is set up. So if you're sitting there resisting, and there's a law of physics, equal and opposite force against it, you push and it pushes it back. That's not true in psychology. That's just true in physics. Here's a wall, I'm pushing, and it's pushing back. Isometrics, it's pushing back the same amount of force that I'm pushing on it. That doesn't work in psychology, but most people think it does. You do not want resistance in a circuit. If your computer's getting really hot, that means it's perhaps drawing too much current. There's going to be a problem. So if you're using conductivity, as we are, back and forth, you're going to have something is going to come of it. Something you want to go out and meet somebody or talk to somebody. Go have a drink with somebody you don't like. All right. I have a friend I met in Connecticut in a cafe. He's a wonderful person, but he's a Trump guy. And I hear some crazy stuff. And I go, oh, yeah, okay. And somebody says, what are you doing? I was like, there's a kernel of really goodness in this person. And I get along with this person, and he's helped me out, and we're good friends. So we have a conversation, right? I'm not going to resist him, because then what is in it for me?
Absolutely, yep.
So there's an exchange, it's a give
Yep.
and take. So if you're just taking, that's a problem.
And if you're just giving,
That's a problem, right? So there's this dynamic. So
Yeah.
resist, don't do that. Be cooperative, have a conversation. Somebody might change. You might change. You might think that you are on top of your game because you think this way and what have you. That may not be true after you have a conversation with somebody you don't like,
Yeah.
or somebody who has a different sexual orientation, or a different skin color, a different religion. And all of this can be fixed if we allow it to be. We're really our own worst enemies in this situation, right? It's the 21st century, and this is where we're at.
I know. It's the dark ages. We're going back to the dark ages.
But, I call it a correction. It's a wound. White blood cells have come to the wound, and it's going to clean itself out, and it'll be fine. But we have to go through this and have a healing crisis, because you get sicker as you get better, right? And so that healing crisis is, I think, where we're at right now. And so we see it, we know what it is. And so that's across the board. And that's the interesting thing about it. It's not just this, or this, it's across the board. And so people like us, folks that we deal with in our everyday lives, they're those are the folks who are making a difference. And that's who we have to deal with. Deal with the people who are making a difference and changing things.
I hope. So the motto of Soft and Savage is that there are those who seek challenges, there are those who are faced with challenges. Soft and Savage is the universe where both excel. How do you feel that you're a candidate for the Soft and Savage people?
My soft side? I'm an empath. And the empath will identify with folks who are in need to be helped. And so I've been a rescuer most of my life. And in doing the rescuing, you're not really thinking about yourself. You might want to be a little bit more savage. So savage protects soft, and soft can teach savage to calm down. So it's the yin and the yang. Soft and Savage is a brilliant name. It works so well on so many levels that it's mind-boggling. It's mathematical, it's scientific, it's quantum even. And so it's like, there's in physics, there's a thing called entanglement. So entanglement is like whatever you got yourself into with somebody and they go away, you will always be entangled with this person somehow in this situation. And somewhere in the universe that is happening, no matter what the distance is, you'll still be entangled. And Soft and Savage are married. They're together, wood and glue. And so one is not good without the other. It's a balance. And so that's what we need to do. We need to balance this thing. And Soft and Savage says it all. I mean, it's a great, it should be a perfume.
Right. And where can people see your work?
November 6th at the City Lights Gallery in Bridgeport, Connecticut on Golden Hill.
And where can people watch your television program?
That could be, you could see that if you Google at this moment, Corin's Picks. I'm the guest host. And in the coming weeks, the show will be completely transferred to me. Then the name will be changed, and then it'll become, I won't be the guest host. It's going to be Daniel Lanzilotta. And if you just Google Daniel Lanzilotta, BronxNet Television.
BronxNet Television?
Yeah. I know something is going to come on because on the I think it's the 18th, I met a woman in a class I took at BronxNet about 5 years ago. And it was about an on-camera class. And we were walking out and she goes, I have my own show. You want to be a guest? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I don't know this woman from a hole in the wall. The next thing I know, I'm on her show, and then I became the go-to guest. Like every time she needed a guest for something, I don't know. I was been on the show quite a number of times, and had been other people's guests on the network, and so I got to know a lot of people. That I became friendly with the director of the entire operation, Michael Noby, and the next thing I know, I was up in Albany. 6 months ago or something, we were lobbying because of the budget cuts for cable television, what have you. So I went up and I was wearing two pieces.
That's a great piece. I love that piece.
This woman's talking to me. I was with my friend Cynthia. She was with this woman, Corinne. And she's like, what is all that? And I explained it to her. She goes, do you want to be a guest on my show? And I said, sure. So I go down. It was like she researched me, and she was like, wow, it was impressive that she did some research. And I liked that. And the next thing I know, I'm on her show, and the next thing I know, she goes, do you want to be a guest host? And I said, sure. And I was like, great. And a friend of mine just did a documentary film about migrants called The Arrivals. And I know it very intimately because I was at in the background doing a lot of weird things for her while she was actually out shooting the thing in New York City. And then she actually went down to Mexico, did the whole, from one side of Mexico right to the Pacific Ocean, shooting this documentary and what have you, and the arrivals of the buses from Texas. So I said, "Would you be my first guest?" And I wanted her to be my first guest because I know her and I know the movie, and it was easier for me to,
Right.
there was
Yeah.
no super gigantic risk. And then she agreed. Then there was a guy by the name of Paolo Malou, and he's a massive, gigantic activist in New York City, a Puerto Rican gentleman, very well known. And he's in the movie with her, welcoming the migrants coming in from Texas. And then she said, "What do you think about Power being a guest?" I said, "I would be super honored if he came on my show," and he did. And then became the progression to doing a third
I'd love to
show,
get
and a
him on
fourth
my show,
show, and a
too.
fifth
That'd be
show.
great.
It's amazing where he is. And then Corin said, "Do you want to take over the show?" I said, "Yeah."
Yeah, I saw you. You did a great job.
Yeah, it's been a learning curve.
Me too.
It's really not easy, and I had 3 guests at once, and that was even crazy.
I saw that, yeah.
That was like, whoa.
But you handled it beautifully.
It was not because when you're in it, and there's cameras on and like here, and you're trying to formulate the next question in your head, but you're listening here. But then I have headphones on, and they're talking to you
Right.
from the control
Right.
room, and
Absolutely.
you're hearing a voice. They're talking, and you have to come up with the next question. Crazy.
Yeah. No, what happens to me is I'm sitting and I'm listening to you and I'm thinking these fabulous provocative questions, and then all of a sudden I realize that I have to speak and I black out and I can't think about what it is
It's
that I
not
want to say.
easy. Yeah, so I have a lot of respect for anyone who's doing
and then
this.
you're worried about what you look like, and then
Right.
and then I've noticed that my voice sounds like this rather than sounding like this, and so
Exactly.
the whole thing.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah. It's been a very interesting learning curve, and I take notes of everything that I think I have to improve on. And one of the hardest parts about shooting that show, it's shot at 6:30 at night.
Oh my
So
God.
it's like, they don't start on time all the time. So you show up at 6:30. You're supposed to start shooting at 7. By it's not happening. So it's 7:15, 7:30, and by that time, I'm depleted already, and I
Right.
don't even get on
I know.
I'm not even seated at the table to have a conversation with somebody.
I think you're fabulous. I think your life is fabulous. I think what you're doing is fabulous. No, and I think that what you're talking about in terms of kids and the schools and getting involved is so healing and so necessary. And it is so lacking. I mean, it's gone missing in our culture and in our population and in our ethos and in our. It's just.
There's some things coming back, like gardening and growing food.
But I just had Sephiron, and it doesn't matter if you're gardening if you're not planting pollinators, because it doesn't matter if you've got tomatoes and you've got this and you got that, and there's dead pollinators. And nobody's pollinating.
That's
the
a
food
really
supply.
good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, the bee is kind of a necessary
Yeah.
insect. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree with that. And it's a lot of things. It's a convergence, and this convergence is not pretty because, as an experiment about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe 10 years ago, I decided that I would become a state of Connecticut energy auditor. And I got somebody to sponsor me, and I took the training. I got the certification on the first tryout, which was pretty amazing. And then I trailed with the auditors, and I was like, whoa, this is insane. And it was not what they say it is. And so I was just like, interesting idea that, we're not where we should be. It's this convergence of many things happening. Our homes are not built properly. There's so many avenues of things that are off kilter, but we don't know.
but I think that it all has to break down and explode, and I think that on a more spiritual level, that might be part of what it is that's going on right now. It's like you can't see what's wrong until it's just in your face.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I had this experience twice. Once on BronxNet on a show, I thought I was going to be the only guest with the interviewer, and it turned out there was this other person. We were having this very conversation like we are here. And I came to the conclusion that the reasons a lot of this stuff is happening because we were having a spiritual deficit.
Absolutely.
Spiritual deficit. What is it? It's not religion. It's
Absolutely.
not you're
Yep,
Jewish,
yep,
you're
yep,
Muslim,
yep.
you're Jain, whatever, Hindu. That's not what I'm talking about. It's something about humans and spirituality as in African art. African art is about the imbuement of every object has life. There's energy, totems, fertility pieces, And the person I was on with turned to me and says, Daniel, you are off base on live camera. And I just kept talking. I didn't pay attention to this person because I wasn't off base. I was correct. A whole bunch of time went by, and there was the million-person march in Manhattan a few years ago, and I was one of the people to go in the back with the cameraman on a trike, bicycle, and the cameraman was on the trike, and the bicycle guy was on the riding the bike, and the interviewer. But the interview before me was by Reverend Reverend Chelsea. I forget her last name, and she said it. But she said it way deeper than I did. And I was like, wow, she really gets this stuff. And I reached out to the guy who did the interview, which was a few years ago. And I said, could you find her for me? Because I've been trying to get in touch with her. He goes, just go and do it. Find her. She just got in contact with me a few days ago, and she's going to come on the show.
Great.
Because what she said is so spot on about the spiritual aspect of environmental issues that in the ancients, in thousands of years ago, there was a term called hylozoism, right? That word I learned when I was about 12 years old because I had a dictionary. That was my only book, really. I would love my dictionary, and I would go through and I would learn words, and that word stuck with me my entire life. And that the ancients said, everything is alive. Everything has spirit.
Yeah.
Of course it does. And then a zillion years later, scientists go, yeah, they're called atoms. So this plastic isn't dead. It's alive. But it's an angry atom, you might say, for lack of a better description, not so scientific. And it lasts forever. So no matter what happens to it as it breaks down into micro and nanoplastics, those angry atoms are out there. And it's not the dinosaurs that make up crude oil, it's the flora and fauna with some other animal aspect to it, which creates crude oil, which is that's the extraction that's broken down to many carcinogenic products, petroleum, benzene, kerosene, and we're paying the price of a carbon-rich society. So this is the issue. But there's a lot of good things happening. Of course, as I said earlier, we're not at the point where people are being able to scale it up to the point where it becomes part of our everyday fabric of living our lives carbon-free and not polluting. So we have a lot to do, but I think we're on the right track from what I see, because I also go to a lot of the other side. It's not just plastics. I want to know what's going on the other side. And so my interest has shifted now to bioplastics. Not that I'm going to make art from it, but I do want to know more about it and biomaterials. And I'll tell you, it's absolutely fascinating because I was just at one on Sunday, and it's mycelium and things like that, lots of fungus and mushrooms, and it's quite amazing. And I went to a couple of other ones, a couple from I think from Barcelona, Spain. They're using olive pits. The stuff they're making with olive pits is insane. And their story was absolutely fascinating. I got to meet them, not personally, but as they were speaking, I was in the audience, and how they came to this. And they go to all the places, because Spain is producing olive oil, and it's one of probably the largest producer of olive oil. So there's a lot of olive pits. And they're taking these olive pits, and they're grinding them up, and they're making bioplastics and materials, and it's like crazy what they're making from this stuff. Is it to the point where they could scale it up to like major stuff? No, but it could get there. It could get there if a lot more money's pumped into it and more technology and more science. They will get to that point where they'll be able to scale it up to eliminate all this stuff.
But not to introduce a screaming non sequitur, but the other person who's talking about the fact that we need a spiritual crisis and that we're there is the Pope. I was listening to the Pope last night, and he is apoplectic about what's going on, and talking about the fact that he thinks that what God is showing us is that we have to see the absolute disintegration and devastation before we can wake up and turn around and realize, oh my God, we have to do something.
We're good at it. We have to start realizing that We have to correct a lot of things, and we
But
have
will
to get
we
to the
do it
bottom
in
of that.
time?
Will we do it in time?
Will we do it in time? No.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't answer that.
Daniel, thank you so much. This was so lovely. This was an
Thank you.
exquisite, exquisite conversation. Thank you.